Hi, and good day. I'm Corby Skinner, and I'm the host of Living Well in Montana. And this is a program of LIFTT, which stands for Living, isn't that funny that I shouldn't know, Living Independently for Today and Tomorrow. And it's an organization, a nonprofit in Billings, that helps people with disabilities in work, at home, and today we're going to find out about transportation. So I have a guest today, Lee, who is relatively new to the LIFTT family. Lee Hoblitzell.
Correct.
Right?
Yes, sir.
And he's going to tell us all about how you get around when you have a wheelchair and you can still drive. And I think it's going to be a fascinating program. So we will have an interview, and then at the end of the program, we have a video that we found of a woman sort of step by step explaining some of the things you can do.
Yeah.
And the various adaptations for cars and vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, Lee, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me, Corby. I appreciate it.
So Lee, tell me a little bit about your background. You grew up in Billings area?
Yes and no. I grew up between 7 and 14, and then I left to the greater Seattle area and boomeranged back when I was 32.
Ah.
So I just got tired of the hustle bustle in Seattle, and there's a lot of hills and inclines. So
there's a lot of hills.
Yes, there are. So yeah, it's just a much better setting for me out here in Billings.
And then tell me about your injury.
So,
was it a motorcycle accident?
No, it was actually it was a motor vehicle accident. I had rolled my car trying to avoid a deer on a typical drizzly Seattle evening about 40 miles outside of the city.
Wait a minute, that sounds like a Montana thing to do.
Yes.
There are deer in Seattle?
Well, like I said, it was about 40 miles outside of Seattle.
Ah.
So once you get about 20 miles outside, it's pretty suburban, rural terrain. So yeah, the deer was in the road, swerved and miss, rolled my car, broken neck, broken back, traumatic brain injury, but...
And how old were you?
I was 19, so this would have been in November 15th of 2002. So,
wow.
It's been a few years in the wheelchair.
And you recovered, though. That sounds like a serious car wreck.
It is, but it's about perseverance, and what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. It's a really cliche saying, but it really does. You just pick up the pieces and keep moving.
One of the things that I think is sort of a misconception about people with disabilities, particularly at LIFTT, there are some people that are born with disabilities. Mm-hmm. You could be blind, you could be paralyzed at birth, you could have various physical issues, but a lot of people come to LIFTT and use the program because of traumatic injury.
Correct.
Right. How was it adjusting to a wheelchair?
It's quite daunting, but when you don't have a choice, it is what it is, and you just, again, you pick up the pieces and keep moving. Sometimes it's baby steps, and sometimes it's huge strides and leaps. I think the biggest thing for me in gaining my independence after I was able to get my wheelchair in and out of a car was driving. I mean, it really opened up the whole world again to me, and I was no longer relying on other people to get me around or city or state transportation.
Right.
So, again, it's a tough pill to swallow, but not entirely impossible one, and there are so many different organizations and avenues, even in Billings, that people just don't know that are out there to help people try and live independently. Because that was, again, that independence it's a weird, almost gradual process, especially when you're starting over. So
one of the programs we had on a couple weeks ago was about adaptive equipment and stairways and ramps that people need in their homes to make their home very accessible. But I think a lot of people would be surprised at all the technology that now is available to let people drive.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
We're going to talk a little bit about that. So tell me your experience about it. I suppose when you were a young man, you're thinking, I got to get a car.
Yeah, I mean, you need to find some sort of transportation that's going to be the most or provide the most utility to your life. So for anybody that's in a wheelchair, it's good to consider the height and where you're going to be or what you're transferring into. If you have a little bit more leg function and stuff, a truck is obviously going to work a lot more or be more practical in Montana setting for sure. But I found that an all-wheel drive, some sort of all-wheel drive, even if it has like a Subaru type lift or something like that, that's not even that high off the ground, has provided me with the most utility. I have a dog, so wagon is great. It's a great grocery getter. It's not sexy by any means, but it does 100% of what I need it to.
So it was interesting when I arrived at the studio and you were parked there, I got to witness how you get out of the car.
Yes.
So you're in your car, and then all the wheelchair is there too. And
Correct.
So you sort of explain all the parts about how you get out of the car.
Absolutely. So basically, I treat my chair. It's in my passenger side. There are different methods. Some people throw it over their shoulder and into the back. But basically, I just bring it over my body, set it up on the side, and what's cool about rigid chairs is it's made out of aluminum, so it's 11-ish pounds.
Wow.
Yeah. So the wheels pop off on the sides. All this stuff comes out on the fins and the arms, and then the back folds. So it's a bit of a cumbersome shape, but you adjust and adapt. And I've developed a technique that depending on if there's any sort of incline or decline, you know what I mean, that would jeopardize a little bit of the stability.
So you need to think about where you're going
Exactly,
to park. You're not
yes.
going to pull in next to a...
Yeah, and even in handicap spots, it always depends on, because for me, or even a ramp user, you got to get your door all the way open. So having a spot that doesn't have any sort of hashed off area doesn't really do me any good unless someone's really kind and parks far enough away.
That really makes sense when you think about when there's handicap parking, there's usually striping right next to it.
Yes.
I bet a lot of people don't understand what that's for.
I would be lying rather. A lot of people don't understand what it's for. It is for your ramps and again people like me. So I've seen even people with handicap placards that should know better, that use it as a temporary handicap spot because it's in between two of them. But it's really important that society and even as a wheelchair user myself, I didn't know until I had somebody confront me who was a quadriplegic. Besides just having my own issue, but you got to leave those spots that are marked off open for people to get their assistive equipment out of the car. And it could even be an elderly person that's just trying to get their walker out, but they need that extra space with their door all the way open.
I had an experience with a friend of mine that uses a walker. She can get around. She's not handicapped. It's an MS issue, so it's just being very careful. And she parked next to a curb. That's a bad idea, isn't it?
Yes, I mean, you're asking for trouble, but everybody's ailment is a little bit different. If she can navigate it, by all means, do it. But you got to be really familiar with your terrain and know what you're capable of.
So you need to be familiar with how you're going to get in and out of the car. Correct. And park. I mean, I have trouble sometimes parking, and you can't get the door open if the curb's too high.
Yeah.
But for people with a wheelchair, adaptive device, they pretty much need a very flat area.
Yeah, I mean, it's paramount for any sort of thing with wheels on it. Because I've actually had my chair on it's only happened a handful of times, but I've been doing this almost 20 years. But you don't get the brake on tight enough or whatever, and it starts rolling away. But So that's just stuff, again, that's experience. So that's why I'm really attentive to where I'm parking and the terrain, and if there's hills, if there's wind that day that's shutting the door, I'm trying to get my chair out. There's just a lot of things that you don't consider that you just pick up after you've just done it for enough years. But again, I wouldn't trade it for anything. My wheelchair got a few scuff marks on the ceiling from transferring it in, but you know, it's such an open door, and there's nothing that isn't available to me now.
Right. So another thing that I was just thinking about in terms of where you live and finding the right sort of home, because you have a car, but you also have to be conscious of getting in and out of your house, and whether it's a garage or a carport, or tell us a little bit about finding the right place.
Well, for me, I mean, I'm a homeowner now, so fortunately I was able to get my house built pretty much for me and around me. But I've lived in enough areas and spaces that isn't always the case, and again, my mantra is adjust and adapt. But some of the things you have to avoid, I guess, again, like would be like a taller curb. I avoid hills like the plague, and even like I'll adjust how I'm going to park my car, whether it's backing it in or pulling it forward, just because there's laws of physics that apply, and so it can get challenging at times. But yeah.
So let's talk a little bit. I think really you're the expert on the car part of it, and the adaptability. So let's talk about the very first thing about getting a car and the kind of things you need to make it into something that you can then drive.
Well, for me, again, I use hand controls. There are 3 different types of hand controls, and again, the YouTube video gal will explain all of it.
So that's going to be at the end of our program,
I
a
apologize.
demonstration of the car.
But again, there's different adaptive equipment. But for me, I'm healthy and strong, so the cheapest route for me was actually just putting in hand controls, and that still allows anybody like you to jump in my car, because the little hand controls just attached to the pedals, so anybody can get in and drive it and stuff like that. But there are so many different adaptive driving, oh my gosh, I'm drawing a blank, but there are many different aids that are available for people with mobility issues. Even if you're quadriplegic, if you have enough hand function, they have a knob that is like 3-pronged, and you just have to almost slide your hand in it. And so if you just have minimal hand function, even a quadriplegic can drive. There's ramps that that help.
So what are the 2 hand controls that you have in your car?
Mine is it's a 90-degree hand control, so I will push forward, and that hits the brake, and then I'll pull down, and it hits the gas pedal. And it's pretty, I mean, you go in a parking lot and try it out, but it's pretty self-explanatory.
But you probably have to train yourself to do it?
Yes. Well, yes. In most cases, you need to you'll actually have to go to a adaptive ability class. I know that St. Vincent's has one that's in local that you can attend that class, and you get basically an okay. Then you go to your DMV that shows you're cleared to drive and pass all the little obstacles that might be in your way, and there you go. But
so
it's a little bit of a process.
Yeah. So that brings up the legal questions about getting a license, and tell us your experience about doing that.
I mean, DMV, whether it was in a different state or Montana, has always been very accommodating. I mean, you are going to have a wait, but I mean, as long as you go to the DMV, you have your stated ailment or disability on a paperhead from your local physician, and you go there, they make a copy of it, and you make sure whatever your deal is. So like for mine, it says you cannot drive without hand controls. So they have a copy of that on file, and while you're there, you can also apply for your placard too. So so it can be beneficial in that route. So.
And then do you have like a driver's test like everybody does?
I did not take one. But if you're a brand new person trying, again, obtaining your license and stuff, you will have to retest and have somebody go in your car with you and stuff like that. I was able to get out of the driver's ed class, but I still had to take a driver's ed test, or your typical standard test next to you, because it had been enough of a lapse from my injury to when I was ready to drive. But it's really easy. You can find almost all your information online.
So when I was younger, I taught at a camp for handicapped kids. And I knew a woman who had a number of disabilities, but she had a spirit like nobody I had ever met. And she drove, but she wanted a big truck. And I thought, that's crazy. She actually has a lift as a part. I mean, that's a very sophisticated adaptability and expensive, I imagine.
I've seen where there's a company in, I want to say Indiana or whatever, the whole side of the truck or SUV will come, the two doors will come up, and a lift drops out, and you wheel into that, and it lifts you into your driver's seat. But stuff like that, I mean, is almost going to be as much
as the car
that you're looking at purchasing. So again, for me, it was about practicality and what my budget could do, but the sky's the limit. I mean, if you want, there's cranes, there's even like little fold-out seats for trucks that are less obviously sophisticated than a whole lift. It just lifts you up, and then you will I would assume you'd have a crane, or you could just throw it in your back if you had like one of those suicide door cabs. Yeah.
So Lee, one of the reasons we have this program, or doing this program, is we want people to watch and see this and say, wait a minute, maybe I could get a car.
Yes.
Or maybe I have a relative or a son, a father that has a handicap that thinks they can't drive. What would you say would be the first step if somebody wants to investigate getting an adaptive vehicle?
Well, for me, the first step was making sure that I had enough upper body strength to transfer my chair and stuff into a car without any assistance. Again, that's going to be different for everybody, but that for me was the first step, was to making sure I was physically able to.
Because you have to pick up and move
it in.
Right.
But again, there's enough adaptive equipment, the ramps and stuff like that, for people that are quadriplegic and don't have a lot of upper body strength or MS or whatever. There's so many different routes you can go. And again, I mean, money can make whatever you want happen. But I've always tried to keep it practical. And I would love a Land Cruiser, but I'm not ready to shell out $15K to get the adaptive equipment so it can work for me. Maybe in another day I'll do it, but for now I'm healthy enough and stuff like that. So I would say making sure you're healthy enough. It depends on, like for me, I can't feel my bottom or anything, so make sure you might have to get an extra cushion or some sort of seat cushion that would avoid any sort of skin breakdown or stuff like that. So stuff like that is that you wouldn't necessarily think about. And then after that, again, it'd be finding a car that is the most utility for me without making me, look like a soccer dad. No offense to soccer moms or dads out there, but I'm not ready for that yet. So, again, it's just whatever works for you, and whatever's going to provide the most utility for your lifestyle, whatever that may be.
This program, Living Well in Montana, is a program of LIFTT, which is Living Independently for Today and Tomorrow. We have offices in Billings and an office in Glendive, and there's a phone number on the screen right now. So if people are interested in finding out more about adaptability, can they just call the office?
They can call our office. We will also have links provided on our website at LIFTT, LIFTT.org. So we'll have links on there for that, as well as just general information for people. But yeah, we have people ready to help you get going, however that route may take you. If you're a little shy, again, you can go online, but we would love to deal with you in person and help you out.
One of the things that I love about working with LIFTT is the intention of the program is to get people to live independently. And certainly there's adaptive equipment that's needed for homes, for stairs and whatnot.
And I just want to throw in there, it's not just about younger people and people my age. We help the elderly to continue living independently so they're not in some sort of home or community like that. If they want to continue living independently, we would love to reach out to our elderly community because, again, if we're just talking about driving, for my dad, he suffers from Parkinson's and stuff. There's a little fold-out deal on the inside of his door that he can therefore kind of use to lift himself out at the same time. So there's lots of different stuff out there, and age is not an issue. We would just like to help anybody who wants to continue to live.
And one of the things that you pointed out that I think is really critical is that every individual has a different kind of ability or disability.
Correct.
And the more that you know what you can do, then an organization like LIFTT can help you find the right adaptable equipment. And
there's lots of resources out there, in Billings especially, that I just don't think people know that are there and are available. So even if there's something that LIFTT might not be able to help you with, we have enough reach with other organizations that we can usually figure something out for you, one way or the other.
And traditionally, pre-COVID, LIFTT have an office that people could go to.
Yes.
But now we're very much focusing on phone, on internet. And I would also like to point out we have a newsletter.
Yeah.
And if you would like to receive a copy of the newsletter, you can call the LIFTT office and we'll put you on our mailing list. It comes out every other month.
Correct. Yep, bi-monthly.
Well, Lee, we have your experience, which has been so interesting and helpful, and thank you for sharing that with us. But we also have a video that we found, and as you pointed out, a very pretty girl.
Yes, she's very pleasant to the eye. Much more than I. So, and it's much more edited, and she just does a great job of walking you through the whole process.
All the various elements of adaptability for driving. So we will go to that video, and thank you for joining us, Lee. Thanks for being on the program today.
Appreciate it. Thank you again.
Hi, welcome to How To with Mary Allison. There are many misconceptions society has about individuals living with a disability. One of the biggest and most frustrating to me is the misconception that a physical disability decreases a person's independence. While physical disability can make life a bit more challenging, it should not eliminate a person's independence. One of the biggest independence milestones all Americans look forward to is the ability to drive. Once we turn an acceptable age and pass the appropriate test, an entire new world of independence and responsibility becomes available. The great thing is that for most people who have limited use of their lower extremities, driving is quite simple and doesn't require many modifications. The first step to driving is learning what type of adaptations you may need. Just because you use a wheelchair, that does not mean you must buy an accessible van with a ramp or lift. In fact, most individuals with the majority of hand and arm function can buy any type of vehicle right off the lot. If you are new to adapted driving or unsure what type of accommodations you may need, then you will need to meet with a physical or occupational therapist or a certified driver rehabilitation specialist. Contact your state's Department of Vocational or Rehabilitation Services to learn about the steps it takes to receive a driver's license. Most states require you to go through adapted driving lessons before you are able to get your license, but they also have programs where the lessons and modifications are at little or no cost to you. Once you have figured out what general accommodations you may need on your vehicle, you will need to do some research on the specifics of your modification. Hand controls are one of the most common driving adaptations for individuals that have limited leg function. There are three main types of hand controls: portable, mechanical, and electronic. Portable hand controls are relatively inexpensive and are great to have on hand in case your car is in the shop and you have to drive another car. They can be installed in minutes and are very portable, but they are not ideal for long or frequent drives. Permanent hand controls are a good choice for your primary vehicle. The standard or mechanical hand controls come in 3 main styles: push-pull, right angle, and motorcycle. All styles of hand controls have their pros and cons, so your decision will be largely based on personal preference. I drive with right angle hand controls, where I must press down to accelerate and forward to stop. But I also have used push-pull controls. Push-pull hand controls are very self-explanatory. To accelerate, pull the hand control towards you, and to brake, push it away. For motorcycle hand controls, you will twist your hand control to accelerate and press it forward to stop. I would encourage you to try the different options and figure out what works best for you. Talk to your mobility equipment dealer about the different types of hand controls they offer and ask if you can try before you buy. Step 3. Once you have picked your hand controls or other adapted devices, it's time to think about your vehicle. Finding the right vehicle is just like finding the right wheelchair. It's a balance of form and function. Sure, you want your vehicle to have a certain appearance, but you also want it to be practical. Now, practical doesn't mean it has to be boring or ugly, but it is important to consider how you will get yourself and your chair into your vehicle. There are many different types of ramps, lifts, mechanical seats, and other adaptations that can assist you in getting yourself and your chair into your car. These are great for individuals who use power wheelchairs or have very limited hand and arm function. But I would encourage individuals who have more function to learn how to get in and out of a vehicle without an assistive device. This will save you time, money, and the threat of a mechanical malfunction. There are many different ways to transfer yourself and your chair into your vehicle. A common method, one which I use to transfer my chair into my car, is called the over-the-shoulder method. First, I transfer into the driver's seat of my car. Then I recline my seat. I take the wheels off of my chair and I place them over my shoulder and into the back seat. I pick up my chair and I lift it over my shoulder and into the back seat. I tilt the back of my seat, put on my seatbelt, and I'm ready to go. Individuals may also use this method, but place the chair into the passenger seat. Individuals who drive minivans can transfer into the driver's seat and then pull their entire chair into the back seat. This method can save some time on disassembly. Other people may choose to enter the back seat and pull their chair in behind them. Whatever method you choose, make sure it allows you to feel confident and independent. Transferring your chair into your car can become slightly more challenging the taller your vehicle is. So take that into consideration when purchasing a vehicle. When transferring into a tall vehicle, especially if you are parked on an incline, make sure to apply your brakes on your chair. If you're like me and you don't have brakes on your chair, then you may want to attach a bungee or some sort of cable from your chair to your car. This will help you avoid a very awkward situation. Another step to consider when transferring into a tall vehicle is applying your seatbelt before you disassemble your chair. This will give you a little extra security when bending down over very hard pavement. Just like the many different methods to put your chair into your vehicle, there are even more ways to transfer yourself into your vehicle. I always look for a vehicle that has a handle or a grab bar on the driver's side as well as the passenger side. Many times, vehicles only have a handle on the passenger side, which can make your transfer much more difficult when you are the driver. Remember, when transferring into a vehicle, try to keep your arms and hands as close to your body as possible. The further out your arm is placed, the greater the stress will be placed on your shoulder joint. By simply keeping your arms relatively close to your body during transfers, this will decrease the chance of a shoulder injury. Step 4. Once you have found the right vehicle for your needs, then you can complete the final step of the adapted driving process. Take your vehicle to a mobility equipment or conversion dealer and have your modifications installed. If you're purchasing a new vehicle, ask your dealer what type of reimbursement their company offers for adaptive equipment. Almost all car companies offer a certain reimbursement for the cost of adapted devices. When it comes to driving with a physical disability, there are dozens of different modifications, many which I did not mention in this video, that can help you be an independent driver. It is important that you take the proper steps to learn about your state's regulations for drivers with a disability and the proper modifications you may require. While it can be a long and challenging process, it's important to have your end goal in mind, to gain greater independence and have others forget about the chair and focus on your new set of wheels. Thanks for watching.